Welcome to the Faith and Trauma Center podcast, a unique approach to exploring the intersections of religion, trauma, sacred spaces, and mental health.
Each month, we choose a different topic to discuss weekly from different perspectives. The first week, we explore the faith, community, and clergy perspective. The second week, the mental health practitioner perspective. The third week, the perspective of individuals working to heal from religious trauma. And the fourth week, we invite a special guest who has been impacted by our monthly topic to join us.
This format follows the design of the Faith and Trauma Center's 3 pathways for resources and education. We invite you to explore all the additional material that we offer at faithandtraumacenter.org.
Let's jump into this week's conversation.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Faith and Trauma Center podcast. I am one of your hosts, Christy Love, and I am joined by my good friend and co-host, Holly Madden. Holly, it is Thanksgiving week. You are off of school all week in vacation mode. How are you?
Oh, I'm lovely. It's been wonderful. We're only a few days in, but everyone deserves.
How are you spending vacation mode?
Well, because you asked, Scott and I celebrated 11 years together this fall. And so we were gifted some like little go on a date money from my parents, and my in-laws were like, give us the kids for a night. And I looked at my husband and I was like, we're going to save this till November because you're taking me to go see Wicked. So we're going to see Wicked tomorrow, which I'm very excited for. I grew up watching a lot of Broadway shows, so it's been fun to see this one come to life in the movie. So I am one of those nerds that's like all excited about it. But yeah, other than that, we've been doing a lot of hiking. We've been doing a lot of art. We've been doing a lot of baking. And cooking, lots of things like that. Just enjoying some time together. I think since I'm obviously both my kids are in school, so they're in the education system, and both my husband and I work in education in this season. It's been fun that we get to have this entire week off together. So just getting to enjoy some time. So, and lots of Christmas movies because we decided to put our tree up early. So, yes, lots of self-care.
Yep. Do you have a favorite Christmas movie that you've watched recently? Maybe like an old favorite or something that caught you by surprise?
So my my favorite Christmas movies are like ones that like Scott will watch them with me, but they're not like traditional Christmas movies that I'm like really excited. We're probably gonna watch this week. I really love the little romantic movie, Serendipity. That's one of my favorites.
That's a great one.
While you were sleeping, both of them are more just because they take place during Christmas.
Yeah.
I think I grew up with those, so I just have always really loved those. But my new favorite one is the movie with Anna Kendrick. Is that how you say her last name in it? No.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
It's a beautiful movie. It's one we've been watching the last several years with my kiddos. This year just really, I mean, I love it every year, but it just like was just such a wholesome, like it just resonated with me because I'm like, there's so many stories out there that have really good messages in them, but like the message of this movie is so beautiful because it's so much of a social justice rooted message. Like there's a lot of intentionality in just like seeing all people as worthy. And I won't spoil it, but if you haven't seen it, but there's a scene where she's working with some different people and that are existing inside of a homeless shelter, a family homeless shelter. And so it's just like really beautiful to see messages that honor a lot of that diversity of experience represented in a movie like that. That's just cute and charming and funny, but also just sends like a really powerful message of love and kindness and how much that's needed, especially in the holiday season. So I've really enjoyed getting to watch that one, both because it's hilarious.
Yeah.
It makes me laugh a lot, and my kids love it. But yeah, it's just really nice to see wholesome messages in movies. I'm one of those that can't handle a lot of the traditional movies like Home Alone and A Christmas Story. I know people are going to be like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, I like things that are wholesome. So, okay, I've
That's fair.
digressed.
That's fair.
What about
Yeah.
you? you've been watching a lot of
Well,
Christmas movies too.
yeah, so this is, in ministry work, this is like the crazy time of year. And so, lots of extra things on the calendar and lots of extra services to plan for and sermon prep and all the things for Advent and trying to make sure all the Christmas pieces are in place. So it is an intense ministry season between now and Christmas. And so I think I've always really appreciated Christmas movies because in the evening when I do get home and can kind of power down in this season, like giving myself permission to just curl up and watch a movie and just kind of, get absorbed in a storyline for a little while is always really lovely. So we always joke that this is the time of year between football season and Christmas season that we make the most of our YouTube TV membership because I can watch my football games and we can watch the Hallmark Channel. So, but I will say that we've had to take a little bit of a break from Hallmark movies recently because I feel like every commercial is a dog commercial, and I have a dog who feels the need to defend us and our household from anything that is on that television with four legs. And so it is not as enjoyable when every other commercial, our sweet little cockapoo Teddy is like attacking the television ferociously. So we switched over this last weekend to some streaming services, trying to find some Christmas movies. And last night, Bob and I watched a movie, and I was like, oh my gosh, I got to talk about this movie on the podcast. So I'm a big fan, as are you, Holly, of British movies. And I found this movie last night on Amazon. And I was kind of like reading the description of it, and I was like, oh, that sounds really lovely. And then we watched it. And first of all, I had the most wonderful time finding all of these like familiar actors. And I was like, oh, it's Dr. Sharon from Ted Lasso. And oh, it's Dean from the Harry Potter series. And Mr. Filch from the Harry Potter series, and like all of these different characters that I recognized. But anyway, it was a movie called This Is Christmas. And the premise of this movie is it's a train of commuters who essentially take the same train every day together. And one of them gets the idea of like, we're spending so much time together every single day in the morning and in the evening. It's oftentimes the same people on the train, and they don't ever talk to each other. They don't know each other. And so he comes up with this idea to throw a Christmas party for everyone that's on the train. And it's just kind of this story of how strangers become friends. And it was really lovely and really beautiful and just such a great reminder of just the power of community. Like you got to kind of see a lot of the stories from the characters that were on the train who maybe were like really grumpy or weren't very friendly. And then you started to get to know their lives and understand why, and watch them start to interact with each other, and not just on the train, but in real life as well. And fictional real life, the context of their character. But it was just really beautiful. And it just, I think, was a great reminder. The one line that was in there that kind of kept sticking out to me was like, strangers are friends we just haven't had time for yet. And I thought that was just a great reminder as we go into the holiday season, that sometimes we're in proximity with people a lot. That doesn't mean that we're in relationship or community with people. And so what does that look like to be intentional and get to know the people we share commonalities with and connections with?
I love that. And I love that we're starting with this conversation, honestly, because I think that, as we're recording this live time, like things are just a hot mess in our world, our political climate. Like, we've had a really heavy week in my house with some of the political movements that have been made, just grieving that. There's some concerns on things that are going to impact us, and just worried about people that we love who are impacted even more significantly. And so I think that there's something to the fact that whenever you pick up a screen or you turn on, we're just like inundated with bad news, or we're inundated with what feels like so much oppression and hatred towards people groups that we love, that we care about. And I think there's a lot of people that I know that I talk to who feel a lot of helplessness right now, that are just like, is like, we're doing things, but it doesn't feel like it's making a difference. And, or people that are just like really suffering through it. And I think that there's so much health and benefit to finding ways to disconnect from that. And I think that movies can be a really beautiful way to do that. And I know I've recommended to a lot of people lately, like, there's a lot of crazy powerful kids movies, like the movie Wish, that has like this theme about like overthrowing oppressive reigns. And that movie, the movie Noelle that I was talking about, like really strong feminist and like egalitarian kind of concepts that are in it. And I find that those things can be so motivating and inspiring when the real world's not that way. And so I think that it's just really powerful that, if you find yourself like, oh, I just feel like I want to put on a Christmas movie, or I just want to watch something. Even the movie, I think the movie Wicked resonates so much with people because there's a lot of those themes in that movie. There's a lot of themes of like oppression and racism towards people, or violence towards people. Like there's just so much a ruler that is doing things in an evil way. Like there's so much that resonates, and so I think that there's something really powerful that people are drawn to, because it's like, I need to be reminded that like good does overcome. So
Mhm.
I want to speak that into anyone who may feel like really guilty for, I'm taking a night off to watch a movie, and I would say good for you. I think that that's probably one of the best things we can be doing, is finding ways to just keep our perspectives focused on worlds that do
Mhm.
exist, and community
Yeah.
and all those different things. So anyway, my
Yeah.
rant is over, but
Well, and I mean, there was an interesting study that came out, oh gosh, in the last couple of years. I know you and I talked about it when it first came out, like between each other. We texted it to each other and then talked about it. But it was kind of this little joke, is how it started between us, but there's so much truth to it, right? Um, you and I both have this habit of a lot of times watching the same shows over and over, um and like finding a lot of comfort from those shows, right? Like Ted Lasso, or I don't know, for a long time, like Gilmore Girls, I always go back to in the fall, right? Or your husband really loves The West Wing, or occasionally, like if I really want to be nostalgic, I could like watch an episode of Friends, but then I get really cringy about like, ooh, how much of that did not age well. But a lot of times, like if I'm going to put something on in the background while I'm doing something, or if I just want to like really relax, I'm going to watch something that I've seen before, right? And this study was talking about how watching things that are familiar and predictable is incredibly regulating for our brains. And, after the unpredictability of the day and the world that we live in and the anxiety and the chaos, like engaging in a storyline that you already know, you can already trust, like has a very calming effect on our nervous system. And it really just kind of allows us to just like kind of crumble and relax and let our guard down for a little while and catch our breath in a way that something newer doesn't, because we're still kind of that, heightened what's going to happen. Our adrenaline's still a little up, our anxiety's still a little up, but something that we know and we can trust and we're comfortable with just feels very cozy and very regulating. And so I think there's something so true to that for Christmas movies, right? Like a lot of them we tend to rewatch year after year and have kind of our favorites and our go-tos that we love. But then also even newer movies, Bob and I kind of joke about like Hallmark like movies, right? Most of them have the same plot line. It's just kind of like mix and match with characters and locations. But there's still kind of a predictability about this.
yeah.
And I think you're exactly right. In a time where our world just constantly feels like I don't think anything else shocking and surprising could possibly happen, and then three more things happen that day. Like I think there's a craving in our nervous systems right now that says, I just need something I can ground myself in that reminds me of the good in the world and that people can care about each other and be kind and organize a Christmas party for a train full of strangers. And
I mean, I think to credit that, I think that I've seen several different like memes. We've talked about this in a lot of my classes, and it's not anything new to me, but every time I hear it, it's just this really powerful reminder of how just overly important it is, but how few people really understand that. And that's how teaching people and in ourselves like mastering the art of regulating your nervous system is the thing that like lowers crime rates and it helps eliminate poverty and it increases compassion and empathy. It moves things, it moves everything forward. Like when and honestly, like, I have so much respect for the yogic philosophy and for a lot of like the Southeastern Asian, where a lot of the ancient culture of yoga was created. And when you look at a lot of that culture, so much of it is grounded and rooted in this like concept of emotional regulation and a nervous system regulation. And I speak to that because it's this reminder for me because I've been so guilty when we were just in the thick of working with individuals that were experiencing homelessness and working with families in the foster care system. Like, guilt would eat me alive when I would try to sit down and rest. Like, I would feel so guilty that I wasn't doing more. Like, to the point that I remember, and you and I were both guilty of this, like, we would sit down and we were watching documentaries because it was like, I need to sit down and rest and put my feet up. So I'm going to watch a documentary to better myself in understanding this better. Or listen to a podcaster on this issue. And there was a season there where that was so constant. And it's because I felt so guilty that I was so aware of my privilege and so guilty that I wasn't doing nonstop. And now healing from a lot of that burnout that I was experiencing has just been
Mhm.
this really powerful reminder. And I find myself in conversations with people all the time, like, you need to like take a bubble bath and watch movies regularly and do art and invest in your own things that you love to do because when you're in that place where you're regulated, then you have so much more capacity to do good in
Yeah.
this world. And so yeah, that's my like I'll just
Well, and I think,
put that out there.
yeah, and I mean, I think, the holidays are embedded with so many triggers, right? There is family triggers, and for some of us, there's family estrangement triggers, and there may be trauma triggers, and there may be religious trauma triggers, and there may just be the stress and anxiety of social situations. There may be tension in relationships. And so I think like acknowledging holiday stress, and we're going to talk about this again next week. We've got a special guest coming on to kind of talk about the way our bodies respond to stress. But, I think recognizing that there is power in rhythms and there's power in routines and in cycles. And there's something I think really healing and very predictable about the holiday cycle, right? And it's not just, we're talking about watching movies and things that are familiar, but there's a lot of other pieces with it that I think have the potential, if we are able to see that, that as much as there is potential for stress and anxiety and all those things, there's also a lot of potential for healing and self-care and slowing down the pace a little bit, even little things like I was talking earlier today to Ellie, your daughter, and Ellie was telling me how she wanted a hot chocolate, right? You were telling me this, and that's like my favorite thing in the world. So, like every night, right? I curl up with a glass of hot chocolate. And that's something that I don't do all year long, but when it gets cold and cozy, for sure. And even those kind of things, right? Like the way that our bodies regulate when we hold a hot beverage in our hand and we sip it slowly, and the way that it interacts with our brain chemicals, and it helps to calm us down. Laughter, right? The ability to sit around with friends more frequently in the holiday season, a lot of times, to tell funny stories, to reflect on the past and tell embarrassing stories and dig out pictures and all of the things, like the hormone release, the chemical release that comes with laughter, or crying at Christmas movies. And for some of us, like, we've been in frozen mode where we can't like emote. And like some crazy, ridiculous holiday movie may be the trigger that like helps you finally like cry tears that you've been storing for months and months and months because you haven't given yourself permission to do that and to fall apart. And so, like, I think as much as we kind of give the holidays a bad rap for stress and triggers and all of those things, there's also a lot of beauty. There's a lot of opportunity for healing, and there's a lot of opportunity for those moments that really ground in ourselves, in our bodies, in our brains.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I feel like we came in with an intended topic. I feel like we have kind of walked a whole different route, which I love because I love that I mean, this
It's
is our
kind of a holiday free for all.
we get to just kind of talk about it all.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that there's to make me emotional, but there was a lot of years that I did not like the holidays, and I think that there was a lot of grief. I think there was trauma. There's a lot of mental health struggles in that, and um, I think that, and then in working so closely with so much suffering, then there was this guilt piece that started to build, and a lot of that was like this weird and place where like, we've talked about the and emotions. This is what Ellie,
Mm-hmm.
my daughter, calls them. There were these like moments I'd really enjoy, like oh, seeing the holidays through the eyes of my children, and then there
Mm-hmm.
was also the heaviness of everybody
Yeah.
that I was so close to and working with. And I remember just kind of the tension of that was really complicated for me to wrestle through. And I think in the last several years, and it's kind of been growing each year since my daughter was born, or probably since we started fostering and getting to kind of see the magic through the eyes of our little guy, and his family and supporting them. I, I don't know. I think that there's like I wrote a poem about it while we were putting up our Christmas tree this year. Just how holy and sacred those ritualistic acts are for people, like putting up a Christmas
Mhm.
tree, and how when you get to experience that there, and in fact, like science shows that there's actually this connection between like feeling like the like you're talking about the hormones and like the parts of our brain that light up when we feel peace or we feel content or we feel happy, like those light up when people look at Christmas trees. There's something about Christmas
Mhm.
lights, there's something about Christmas trees that the majority of people experience this elevation of something really gorgeous and beautiful. And I just like I think I was sitting there like and I wrote this poem about like when you've experienced the magic of that and you let yourself experience the magic of that, like I don't want to live any other way than want to share that magic with other people. Like, it's not just about helping meet basic needs or advocating for basic human rights. Like, those are all extremely critical top, like, that's what we should be doing.
Mhm.
But at the same time, there's also this element of we need to carry with us this magic for life because that's this like inspirational piece that people need. Like, they need food, but they also need to know that there's still hope in a Christmas tree. And that
Yeah.
for someone who doesn't have a home and they find themselves finally experiencing their first apartment, like I remember us gathering stuff and being like we need to get them a Christmas tree. Like at the end of the day, is that the most important piece in their house? Absolutely not. But does it matter? Yes, it does. Like, and I think that those are just those pieces. Like I, in my spirit, want everybody to just have the opportunity to experience the magic of the holidays, whatever that means to you. Like whatever, maybe it's that, like you were talking about the community of friendship. Maybe it's
Yeah.
a different holiday that resonates with you in your spirituality and your religion. Like, but to experience just that magic of ritual and tradition and community and all of just the beautiful things and that we never are too old for that and our world's not too broken for that. Like we
Mhm.
need that probably now more than ever.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I think in so many ways, the holiday season also represents an act of resistance.
Mhm.
If you think about it, right? In the midst of chaos and division and political turmoil throughout centuries, throughout generations, like there are documented stories of again and again and again, like the holidays having this unique and special ability to kind of like transcend the chaos, right? Like I think a lot of us have heard the stories of like, you know, soldiers during World War I that on Christmas Eve night started singing Silent Night from both sides of the battlefield. And like there was kind of like this unofficial peace that settled for that night, right? And in kind of honor of Christmas Day. I think a lot about like the power of celebration and the power of the holidays and Thanksgiving and Advent and gratitude and gathering and community. And like, to me, there's something that I think there's so much potential around a dinner table, right? There's potential for healing, there's potential for connections, there's potential for solidarity to come together in that space. And I think maybe that's part of like my own heart this year. You know, I've kind of told you, Holly, and kind of joked, I've always been like a very strict one holiday at a time person, right? And so it's always been like Thanksgiving, and then we put up the tree the day after Thanksgiving, and it's kind of been like ushering in the holiday season, which I know a lot of people kind of share that same time frame with me. But this year, man, I just like November 1st hit, and I think my soul was tired, and like my spirit was just really weary from all of the fighting and all of the divisions and all of the conflict and just like the chaos of our political system and the world and the way that people are being treated and the way that Christian nationalism is being justified, being used to justify like horrific harms in the name of Jesus. Like unbelievably just angry and frustrated, and like all the tension in myself, I think was just like, we need to put up our Christmas tree. We need to hang lights. Like, I just need something to remind me of the what and the why, and something that's bigger that transcends all of this. And I think Christmas and Thanksgiving, that season, this holiday season, it has that power. But I think sometimes, especially in like progressive Christianity, sometimes I think we lose that rhetoric a little bit. We lose the what I would call like the liberation theology narrative, right? That is evangelical Christianity, definitely like kind of treats the holiday season as this celebrate Jesus's birth, who came to die for us, right? Which not even going to go in and unpack all that. But I think the thing that's so beautiful for me about liberation theology and the lens of that kind of theological bent on the holiday season is we see the birth of Jesus that I celebrate in the Christian tradition, and we see all that surrounds that as this reminder that even in the darkest and the most oppressed places, that like holiness can infuse from the margins, and nothing can snuff out justice, and that love still persists, and kindness matters, and hospitality makes a difference. And these narratives that I feel like we need so desperately this year, and narratives that are also incredibly healing, not just for like as a counter narrative to the world, but genuinely internally in us who are like holding on to so much of that stress and tension.
Yeah, I think, as we're recording this, and releasing this out into the world, it's Thanksgiving week. And I've and we've both have like carried that weight and tension of like honoring this day, and traditions like the Macy's Thanksgiving Day, but whatever. And also like working towards a lot of reconciliation and building a lot of awareness around decolonization of this holiday, around decolonization period. And a lot of that I think starts with elevating the voices of Indigenous people and their stories. And something that I have loved, as I have certain authors and poets who come from different tribes who just they're just some of my favorite to get to read their creative arts and their wisdom for the world. Robin Wall Kimmerer is one of those. Caitlin Curtis is one of those. Um, and the thing that has always really inspired me about everything I've ever read from an Indigenous person is how even when talking about suffering and speaking of just like unimaginable harm and hurt and ache, they are a people that still see so much magic in the world there's just this understanding the wisdom of those cultures and those traditions is rooted in genuine love for the planet, love for people, this heart that wants to be a caretaker, a heart that wants and deserves like respect and respect for everyone. And I think that there's something that just really resonates with that. And I know that one of those ways that I've really tried to do that in our own world is making sure that like we're reading books. And so I've got several different books that I've collected over the years that I've been reading with my kids. And one of them is Caitlin Curtis, who's written so many beautiful books for adults to read about deconstruction and connect like her new book is all about writing stories and how powerful storytelling is in our world. I recommend it. It's beautiful. And it relates to a acorn and like how it grows into an oak tree, and it's so beautiful. But she's written a series of children's books that are seasonal, and the one that I read to my kiddos today is literally called Winter's Gifts, and it's all about the magic of winter. And I think that's been like a really beautiful way to get to connect. And that decolonizing perspective and elevating those stories and those voices. But even my daughter just mentioned like just how good it made her feel. We read the book Kipanumek, which is a beautiful story of like the retelling of the first Thanksgiving meal, but it's written from the First People's perspective. And there's a couple different authors that wrote that. I need to pull it up so I can credit them. But it's this really beautiful book, and I was like crying as I was reading it, but it was so wholesome and just uplifting. And I think we need that reminder, as we're moving into Thanksgiving week, that we don't get so bogged down by the experiences all around us, that we deserve to exist in a world where we can still see the magic. Danielle Greendeer and Anthony Perry and Alex Bunton are the authors of that book. Well, I'll link those because they're both really beautiful stories. But yeah, I've been trying to ground more in those lessons that I've learned from Indigenous people is that piece of our advocacy, our work to heal, to reconcile as white people can still be rooted in that what their stories are teaching us is like this world is really magical and it's worth still believing and like it's worth still hoping. And I think what you're saying, like the holidays have the capacity to be that. And it's just that courage to connect with it and to work through all of the emotions. And to connect in with it in our own way. Like for some people, that means setting really strong boundaries with family members, and that sucks and that's hard. But that might be the most healing thing for you, or it might mean reconciliation with someone. It might mean traveling or not traveling. It might mean honoring a tradition, not honoring. Like there's so much diversity to each situation. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I think, Holly, one of the things that I would kind of lift up and say is, especially for those that are listening who, come to this podcast regularly because we address and talk about consistently the topic of religious trauma. I'm going to say this and I'm going to kind of unpackage this, but I think in some ways, as a pastor who has walked through countless deconstruction journeys with people, I would almost say that my opinion would be that maybe Christmas is the last and one of the hardest places to deconstruct. Mm-hmm. And I think partly because it just feels so sacred and so core to who we are. And so I would encourage you that if like Christmas is triggering and Christmas is hard because there is religious trauma there, number one, I fully acknowledge that because there have been a lot of ways that the Christmas story scriptures around Christmas, practices around Christmas inside of sacred spaces has been weaponized 100%. So that trauma and that hurt and that trigger is incredibly valid. I think learning how to reframe Christmas and how, like what you're saying, right? How to reframe and reclaim Christmas as this act of resistance that we're kind of talking about, as an activity of healing and intentionality, and as a way of saying, like, I I am trying to remove Christmas from this tight frame, this holiday season that I have put it in, that is like this checklist of all the things I have to do or all the ways that I feel like I've had to show up. And see this as an opportunity. You know, again, I go back to kind of the liturgical themes of the season, right? I did not grow up in a liturgical church. I grew up in a very evangelical church, conservative church. And so when I came into a mainstream church as a pastor and had to kind of start to learn the themes and the practices of Advent, there was something really beautiful for me and has become really healing for me about reclaiming those themes and deconstructing those themes from what they have been. And so, like, even if the struggle for you is like, I can't separate out this toxic narrative maybe that I grew up with that was really harmful and weaponized against me from the practices of faith at this time of year. Maybe one way you do that is by focusing on those thematic elements, right? Focusing on hope and focusing on peace and focusing on joy and focusing on love and finding ways to reframe your practices and your experiences and your self-care and your regulation and your grounding and your boundaries and your relationships kind of through those lenses in a way that infuses those things into your life.
I love that. I also think if those words are triggering, replace them with something that resonates. I have a coworker who the word peace has been, in my perception, I think that there's a lot of religious trauma that's not necessarily been named. But she says, like, if someone says the word peace, she replaces it with the word Zen. And I love that. But for her, that's what resonates. And I think that there can be a lot of creative permission to, you can identify with the theme, but in deconstruction, like, create that around what feels healing and grounding for you.
Yeah.
And I think that I think that that can be a fun way to do that if those words if those words are kind of triggering. And in other ways, those words can be really healing because it can be a way that maybe we pull it out of something that may be embedded in a lot of like trauma for us, and we can kind of give it a new life.
Yeah. I would push back a little bit. I think, and here's why. Because I think if we're truly talking about deconstructing something, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about this before. Deconstructing is also simultaneously reconstructing, right? Like it's two things that are having to occur at the same time. As you take apart, you've also got to kind of acknowledge what is not and what remains, and right, where do we go with that and what does that look like? And I don't know, I think I struggle a little bit when we talk about, like, yes, I acknowledge that language is really important, but even in that, like, that practice of replacing, maybe instead of thinking of it as replacing, think of it as redefining.
That's probably a much better word than what I was getting.
Right. Well, I mean, because I think, like, when we replace something, we just move away from a word or a concept. And when we would just move away from it, we're not wrestling with it. We're not trying to figure out why it's triggering. We're not engaging and embracing that tension in ourselves and trying to do that work that's there. We're just saying, like, I'm going to avoid that. And I think there is a form of avoidance with replacing, and we do it a lot. But I think one of the important things is to recognize, like, oh man, that word does something. Why does that do something? Because I was taught that it meant this thing, but I look at it now, and to me, I associate it more with Zen or with, the principles of Ubuntu, or I associate it more with finding peace within myself, or whatever that needs to look like. And I think there's something, again, revolutionary and something incredibly empowering about reframing and reclaiming those triggering concepts and those words and those practices in a way that says, this is what it has been, this is what it was, but I get to determine what role it has for me, what that looks like now in the present, and how it begins to shape my practices in the future.
Yeah. There's like a really powerful mindfulness technique around like if there's a word that's really triggering, and that's what I think I was trying to get at, but my words were just not following. So thank you for clarifying that. I think um it's about like writing the word. You can write the word over and over and over again or say it over and over and over again, and you get that I always think of Ted Lasso, the episode when that happens where it like becomes this really funny sounding thing to you because
Semantics association.
that word, and it makes you hyper aware of like, oh, this is not a thing, this is a word. It's made up of letters and consonants that are put together, and then what you do is then when you kind of rebuild it back together, you get to have some of that where you can kind of like, to me this word means like,
Mm-hmm.
and it can be both. Sometimes you need to write out or process through, it has meant this to me because it's been connected to this. Like there was a moment this last week where um I was driving my husband's truck to go to the store because it was parked behind my car, and I just had to go around the corner, which is silly because I can never see out of his truck. But it was just to the like store that's in our neighborhood. So I was driving it, and my husband has like the radio on, and the song that came on was like a Point of Grace Christmas song, which was like something that I had listened to a lot when I was a kiddo. It was a song that had been played at like this nativity scene that was like an annual thing. And I just like, it was this moment of like, whew, like flashback type of a thing. And so I turned it off and I like got out of the car and I took my shoes off and put my feet on the ground. I was like, hold on, I just need a second. Like, I just need to like process what just
Mm-hmm.
happened. Like, I haven't heard that song in years. And I don't know like the root of it because I'm like, I don't connect that with trauma, but I do connect it with this very strong emotion that I would feel watching that
Yeah.
play that was very salvation based. And so I had this moment of like realizing like, okay, I didn't, that emotion came back to me. I didn't love that. But then I ended up actually like pulling it back up and listening to it because I just wanted to be like, oh, I don't need to be like triggered
Mm-hmm.
by that because I've done so much work around it. And it was similar. It was kind of like listening to the words, putting some of it together in my head and kind of like, oh, like, when this was written in the 90s, like this was a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the elevation of these themes and this language. And I don't know, it became something a little bit different for me. Like I was able to process through that. And I think that there's a lot of beautiful things we can do. And I think Christmas is so themed that there's a
Yeah.
lot of really beautiful opportunity to do that for ourselves, and we can appreciate things and
Mm-hmm.
appreciate our growth, because we can see that. And for sometimes things that might feel more triggering may be less triggering during the holidays too, because there's a lot of nostalgia around things. Like people do flock to churches again on holidays. There's still that draw because I think sometimes people want to remember people in their lives that they remember going to church with, or to remember a feeling of that sense of hope and a better world or something like that. And I think that there's just so much good and complex and messy and beautiful and magic, and we do it a disservice if we all just talk about the trauma of
Mm-hmm.
it or the triggers of it, or if we only talk about this thing. I think it's this beautiful, complex thing.
Right. Yeah. And I think, we can definitely be really guilty of that because we do focus a lot on the traumas and the problems and the complexities of the modern church. And a lot of our conversations do revolve around those spaces. Um, but I do think you're exactly right. I think the holiday season oftentimes affords us an opportunity to also kind of mark growth,
Mhm.
right? Like, um, growth in ourselves, growth in our spiritual journey, whatever that looks like, growth in our practices, growth in our relationships. And I think because it is kind of that rhythm, right? Holly's always talking about the rhythms of the seasons and the importance of understanding that. And I think, you know, the seasonal relational nature of the holidays, I think gives us a really beautiful kind of memorial almost like to our own journey. It's a touch point. Like I think about even the practice in our household of like decorating our Christmas tree. Um, I have noticed, and this is something I was remarking to my husband about the other day, over the course of the last, decade, I have a box of ornaments that I no longer feel the need to put on our Christmas tree. And that box has grown significantly over the years. Because again, when you're in ministry and in different seasons, like people will gift you things and people will make things and all these things. And there was something really beautiful to me this year of a couple of pieces that I thought to myself, like, I can like honor that was part of my journey and that has been part of my own growth season. But I also honor that like I have a different lens because of that constant reframing, that constant redefining of what do the holidays mean to me? And they've meant different things in different seasons.
Hmm. I love that. Um, yes, I do too, have a box. And it's kind of funny because there's been when we were putting up our Christmas tree, it turned into we had to move this like entertainment center that we have that has a like electric space heater that looks like a fireplace because someday my dream is to have a wood burning fireplace, but that just hasn't happened in Missouri for us. And so we have this big entertainment center that I have filled with books on all the shelves. And so it's impossible to move. And we had to move it like a foot to the left in order to get our tree up. And so it turned into us pulling all of our books out. So it actually turned into like a decluttering process. And so my husband was going through his long list of books that most of those he hasn't pulled out in a long time. Because reading is just not one of it's a hobby I love. It's not something he absolutely loves. And so he was going through things and it was funny because my husband's on the spectrum, which gives me a whole lot of appreciation for like, and similar to like Christmas, there were some ornaments too we put up where it was like, but it always goes on the tree. Like this is a book I've always had on my bookshelf, like kind of that, where I was like, I can appreciate that, and I want to challenge you. And then he would be like, "Oh yeah, I don't believe this at all anymore." Like, there's a lot of scandal around this person, or we've learned
Mhm.
things now since then. And then it was kind of like, yeah, well, that can go. But like the moment of
Yeah.
like, and that like
Mhm.
where you're like, oh, I'm gonna put it up. I can't. I like
Yeah.
back and forth, especially if there is maybe some like neurodivergence or there's just like a loyalty to things. And I laugh because I think that there's a lot of that in all of us. And yeah, it can be really empowering to be like, I don't need to put that up, but I can still honor it. And I think that's the
Yeah.
most beautiful way instead of like, Marie Kondoing
Yeah.
it. It's like, oh, does it bring you joy? Get rid of it. Sometimes you just need
Mhm.
to be like, the first step is like honoring it and
Right.
gain it back
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. Like I can recognize this as a step on my journey and I can honor the role that it played in my journey, but I can also honor that it may be more in my past than in my present. And I don't need to carry it with me into the future.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're going to continue this conversation. We're going to invite a new friend whose name is Haley into this conversation with us next week. So I hope you will join us again next week on the Faith and Trauma Center podcast as we continue to talk about stress and our bodies and holiday seasons. My dogs are going bananas behind me. Um, I'm glad you can't hear them because they're going crazy. Like it's a commercial on Hallmark, and it's not. It's just a random who knows what.
Yeah.
So
Um,
anyway,
Before we sign off, I want to just invite anyone since this will get to be released before. So if you get to watch this week, Thanksgiving week of 2025, I wanted to say 2026. I want to jump into the future so bad. I'm like, can't remember what year it is. On this coming Saturday, which is November 29th, I am hosting a virtual event and it's a gathering for creatives. And it's just going to be a really beautiful, I think, because it's a holiday week. Like for me, this is a week which shout out to like, one big way we can celebrate holidays and still be very justice based is like anti-capitalism. And so like was as maybe you're starting to do some of your holiday shopping, like supporting local artists and small
Mhm.
businesses, and specifically like queer-owned businesses or Black-owned businesses, like trying to just like boost the people that are often really oppressed with our capitalistic climate. But all that to say, I think there's so many people that in the holidays may just find themselves drawn back into that place of creativity because as adults, it's something that we try to get rewired out of us. And so it's just going to be a fun gathering space with some really gentle meditation, just guided prompts, and then we're going to get to just create. And it's just kind of like a parallel play creating together, but with just a lot of support. It's definitely not something where you're going to be asked to share what you make. It's just something, a space to be together as fellow creatives. So we'll link that in our show notes. It's on our website under our upcoming webinars and our events. But I am so excited for that. I feel in my spirit, this will be something we're going to host again. I don't have like a timeline on that as of right now. I want to kind of see how it feels and stuff like that. But if that resonates with you, I would love to get to share that space with you. So, do you have
Yeah.
anything?
So, well, I was just going to say, so if you're navigating our website, you're going to go to faithandtraumacenter.org and you're going to click on the Learning Center, and then you're going to scroll down just a little bit and click on upcoming webinars. And that is where you're going to be able to register for Holly's event on the 29th of November. You can also see others that are coming up. I'm doing one on December the 5th, so here in a couple of weeks, on religious trauma and family estrangement. Holly's got a winter solstice yoga flow on December 21st. We've got some others coming up after the new year, so great place to check those out and kind of find some ways to get connected to those upcoming conversations and learning events.
Yeah, and all of our upcoming events thus far are all free. We just have the RSVP because we want to be really we not selective, but protective of not just like posting a link out there for everyone to join. And so you just need to RSVP to be able to get that link, but they're free. We want to make them really accessible.
Yeah. Yeah. We want to make sure that you've got as safe a space as possible.
Absolutely.
All right, friend. Well, I will see you back on this same space next week and look forward to continuing conversations and meeting new friends.
Sounds good.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.